We're going to start just by talking about what is profit time. So profit time is going to be a score we're going to assign to every car, and it's going to be a score between 1 and 12, 1 being the worst, 12 being the best. And you can see we represent it as a clock here to show how much profit time we have. And then we took that score and we grouped it into 4 buckets, which we represent with the precious metals, so that we can talk about the platinum cars versus the bronze cars. Platinum cars being the ones that have a score of 10 or better. Next is gold, then silver, and then bronze are going to be the lowest score cars. So just like we've done with rank and market day supply and percent to market, these core metrics in vAuto, we're going to assign profit time to every car, and it's going to be assigned at the time when we're evaluating the cars for the appraisal. And then every night, we're going to assign a profit time score to every car in your inventory, and we'll refresh that every day, so it'll follow it. And so now we'll talk about how we come about calculating this profit time. And as Dale talked about, what we wanted to do was we didn't want to deal with lagging indicators anymore. We didn't want to wait 90 days to find out that a car wasn't going to make us any money. We wanted to use leading indicators. What can we know when we're evaluating that car for our inventory, or when that car is 2 days old in our inventory? So we looked at all the metrics that we could talk about a car that weren't tied to its performance in my lot, right? So I'm not allowed to consider how many days it's been in inventory. I'm not allowed to look at how many VDPs it's gotten on a website, because those are lagging indicators. I have to wait for that car to be on that site before I can talk about those. So we got about a dozen different metrics that we were looking at, and I worked with our data science team to see which ones would be a best fit to help predict how these cars would perform in our inventory. And what we ended up on was something that's fairly simple, and good news is that they're all concepts that we're already familiar with. And where we are is that we use cost to market, like mine day supply, and market sales volume. And so just real quick on what these are, I think that everyone in the room is probably familiar with them, but just in case, cost to market, that's looking at the unit cost of the car, which at the time of appraising a trade-in, that's you're adjusting the cost by deciding how much to pay for that car. Once it's in your inventory, it's the cost we get from your accounting system, and we compare that to the average list price in your market as you've defined from the live market view. And just to remember, when we look at the cost to market, that isn't a percentage that you plan on making in profit, because we're comparing it to the average list price in the market, not the average transaction price or where your car is going to transact. But it's a good indicator of how much room you have in that car. And I call out odometer adjusted here because that's one of the important things in vAuto is being able to compare 2 used cars in the market that have different miles on them. So everything we do is looking at odometer adjusted values. Like mine day supply, that's just looking at the cars in your live market, how many are currently in stock, divided by the average sale rate for the past 45 days. And I call out like mine, we're always looking down to the trim level on these cars. We're not looking year, make, model, because there's a lot of variation when you get down into the trim. And then finally, market sales volume, just how many of them are moving in your market. We use that one because, as many of us know, market day supply is not always created equal. If you have a really high market day supply, but there's a high sales volume, there's still an opportunity to move that car quickly by pricing it right. Where if you have a low volume and a high market day supply, there's only so much you can do with price even to get that car moved. So I want to talk a little bit about cost to market. So we took those 3 metrics, and I created a profit time score that we started testing with. And what we found was, it was a very good predictor, but there were some complexities that we learned about as we evaluated it. Specifically, with our first run using just cost to market, all of the platinum cars were cheap cars. And what we're looking at here, and it's a bit of an eye chart, but our data scientists went and plotted cost to markets, looking at all the inventory of your dealers and all the dealers in provision. And we just said, where is their cost to market compared to the average list price in the market? And what you can see here is that to be a really good cost to market for a $10,000 car, that's going to be down at 50, 60, 65% cost to market. But when you go out to a $40,000 or $50,000 car, you're not going to be able to get those kinds of cost to market. It's going to be up closer 85, 90%. So we wanted to take that into account when we're evaluating the cost to market. And just thinking about why that is, I think the reality is that there's an expectation that your profit, although it'll be higher on a more expensive car, it's not going to grow linearly with the price of the car. And I think that also makes sense. If you go look at just the holding costs on these cars, the difference between holding a $10,000 car and a $40,000 car for a couple months is going to be less than $300. So you don't need to make up that difference by growing the profit by 4x. And the market won't let you, unfortunately. So that was one complexity. And then the other one is one that we've dealt with a lot in provision, and it's core to our product. So what we're looking at here are screens that are in our inventory worksheet inside of provision. And on the right, we have our on the left, we have our scatter plot, and then on the right, we have the gauge that shows where you're priced compared to the market. And what I want to draw attention to is this green zone, which we also call the transaction zone. And that green zone is set for every car that you open up. It's not the same percent to market, for each car. And what we base it off of is the spread of prices in the market. And so this is an actual 2010 Malibu that I found on one of your inventories. And you can see on the scatter plot, the yellow line represents the odometer adjusted average price as you go look at to higher miles. And you can see the green dots, each dot representing a car in your competitive set, how far away they are from that yellow line. That means that although there's an average price that we can look at, there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of risk that maybe that car is actually going to sell for less than the average price. And I'm going to compare that to, this is another car from the same dealer, a 2015 Silverado. And here you can see those green dots are clustered really tight along that yellow line. That means that the price is actually very stable for this car. There's less risk, and it's reflected in that where this green transaction zone is, it's really small, and it's tight right up close to the average list price, closer to like 97% of market. So I just call all that out to say, we've got profit time calculated with 3 simple metrics: cost to market, market day supply, and market sales volume. But there's a lot of complexity and nuance in how we use the cost to market.